Welcome to Fastlane, a JCTV podcast. It's Adam Coon. Joining me is Josh Coppernoll. Josh, we had pretty big monumental achievement here on the channel this last week. Can you explain a little bit more? And we'll talk a little bit more about it, of course, in just a moment.
Yeah, incredible accomplishment happened with Jonathan Parker taking 3 wins this past week on JCTV programming. Um, I was wondering, if somebody was going to do it with a lot of people transitioning and driving in the other series that we broadcast. Jonathan Parker, he became the first one to win in all 3 series. And I wanted to see if somebody could win all 3 series in the same week. And Parker did so. So congratulations to him on that.
Yes, obviously, Jonathan Parker, one of the most dominant drivers in just his short time here on JCTV. Etching his name even more so in history on the channel. Like you mentioned, Josh, he won the Slide Job Racing League playoff opener in the MF Racing Designs Premier Series from Nashville Super Speedway on Tuesday. Backed it up with a win in the NAOR Series, the DI9 Designs NAOR Series at Kentucky Speedway for a second win on this season. And then finally, battled with you a little bit Saturday night to win his return race in the InThePitsNews Truck Series, his first race since winning the championship last year in the Blazer Sim Racing League. He's going to be joining us in the booth a lot more this season, only running 5 races this year. But Josh, what was it like seeing that? Not only calling 2 of those races, but calling that, oh, excuse me, being on track and racing against him for that third one on Saturday night.
Um, yeah, I think it was incredible. He did a great job. I mean, he dominated the races on Tuesday and Friday. And then the Saturday one, he wanted a little bit of a different challenge. He was actually sitting in our voice chat, PBR, joining us there, and it was nice to have his perspective of what was going on in the race as well. But um, the challenge he wanted to do for himself was to start at the back, so he didn't even qualify. And he started in the back, slowly made his way up to the front, and once he got up front, I mean, it was lights out. Um, it was so hard for the competition to get around him or even come close to him, much like what we have witnessed since he's been racing on pretty much anything on JCTV. So um, I'll tell you, I think first of all to win in 3 different series, and by the way, 3 different cars as well. The Xfinity on Tuesday, Gen 6 on Friday, and then the truck on Saturday. It's like it's even more, I think, of a harder accomplishment to do, um, because none of the vehicles drive the same either. So I'm blown away with how talented he is, especially because he hasn't even been on iRacing um, all that long, and for him to just have the speed he does, it's pretty amazing.
On last week's show, Josh, I posed the question to you, what was going to be the most difficult track of the 4 races we were going to see last week on JCTV? And of course, Jonathan competing in the 3 full-time series broadcasted this season on JCTV. But you mentioned Nashville was going to be the most difficult one for him in that weekend, and going back to that slide job race, you mentioned he dominated. Really, he did. That was an amazing performance by him to lead over 100 laps in Nashville on last Tuesday. But just doing so, holding off the field in overtime, knowing it was the first race of the playoffs, and beating Sartaj Man straight up like that in that finish. What's that say about that 48 and going forward in these playoffs here?
I think early on in the season, you could really put Sartaj as the championship favorite. He's had a lot of issues himself and a lot of points taken away from him. But now that we're here in the playoffs, I keep saying it. Sartaj needs to put everything behind him and focus forward. Now that we are here in the playoffs, and Jonathan Parker has won the opening playoff race, honestly, I'm not so sure that Sartaj is the championship favorite anymore. And I'm not going to say Parker is, but what I'm going to say is those two are going to battle all the way to the end. And, I think Auto Club is going to be a race of, who wants it more. And so for Parker, I mean, I think he's definitely on the right foot right now, and I'm looking to see what he's going to be able to do, especially in the playoffs that we have here. Going to Nashville Super Speedway, a concrete uh, mile, 1.3 mile track, I believe. Heading to Watkins Glen. So then going to Darlington and then Talladega. I mean, that's four wild animals right there. So either way, I think Parker, he's got a lot that he's got to overcome. I think he needs a really good Watkins Glen. I think he needs a strong Darlington, and maybe then at Talladega he can be able to afford to have a race to not go his way. Um, Talladega is a wild card. Uh, Jonathan Parker has been open that he's not very good at the plate races, and it does open up the door for other drivers to claim a win, to steal a win. So, I think if Parker wants to race for championship at Auto Club, he needs to have a good Watkins Glen and a really good Darlington.
Now looking on Fridays in the DI9 Designs NAOR series, his second win in just 3 races in the season 13. The other race, won a pretty quiet race up until getting wrecked out by a pretty good friend of his, someone who he's butted heads with in the Pitsnews Truck Series racing for the championship last season, Michael Kruger. What do you think that win for Kentucky, at Kentucky I should say, does for that 92 car in the NAOR series, knowing that he's not a big fan of those Gen 6 Cup cars, but man, he did such a good job with those trucks, and they race pretty similar, and he wasn't a fan of those either.
Um, yeah, I think first of all, he is 2 for 2 on the mile and a halfs, winning at Las Vegas and then again at Kentucky. You mentioned how Iowa was a tough track for him, so I think the Gen 6 really performs at a crazy perspective at the mile and a half. For the fact that he's won two of the two that we've been to so far, um, it just goes to show that I think from now on, the mile and a halfs, he's going to be one to watch out for. I'm not saying he's going to win all of them, but I think you're going to have to watch out for him. Gen 6, the way that I can remember racing it so much is that, it really starts off as pack racing. And it's all about who is able to save their tires after 20, 25, 30 laps. Once that happens, the field starts to spread apart. And when you get long races that go green for the majority of the race, it doesn't stack the field back up, of course, because of not having a yellow. So, I think for Parker, he's got the momentum on his side right now. 3 races in to the season, and he needs to keep going strong. And who knows, maybe soon he'll be a 2-time or well, maybe even a 3-time champion if he's able to get it done in slide job.
And of course, the championship he is not going for this season of our 3 full-time leagues currently going on JCTV right now is the fourth season of the Blazer Sim Racing ITPN Truck Series. And you mentioned this a little bit, Josh. He kind of went into that race a little bit unprepared. Really, first of all, started the week thinking he was going to join Dawson and I in the booth, and then really went the entire week thinking that. Friday gets into practice, just kind of does some laps, and then starts talking to Ethan Fonseca Moreno about placing a bet about racing this race. And you said if he had a race, he had to start at the back, and that was from a bet from Ethan. And it turned out to be a pretty thrilling one because he, like you mentioned, he climbed all the way through the field, didn't dominate, but strategy placed him up at the front, and he took away with that win though on Saturday night at Phoenix.
Yeah, and I know from my perspective, in being a competitor in that race, it was super hard to pass. So for him to go from the back to the front, obviously, I think we all expected it, but I don't think it came as easy as I expected for him to get up there, with it just being so hard to pass. We had a lot of yellows, which did allow for choose cone, whether you want to choose the outside or the inside, and I think, he kind of benefited from a lot of restarts as well, as I did to get up to the front. Um, so it wasn't easy for him at all to get up there. But then once he did, as I mentioned earlier, it was just lights out, and away he went. And we still had a lot of restarts. He still had to give it his all on the restarts with a strong, hard charging Cameron Caldwell, Alonso Chicano. I know Brett Bennett was up there for a bit. Um, there were still lots of ways for him to lose it, but he did everything he needed to do. He checked off all the boxes to hold everybody off, get the restarts he needed, and ultimately take the victory.
Hey, I'm Cameron Caldwell, and as of April 29th, 2023, I am the all-time wins leader in the InThePitsNews Truck Series, and you're listening to Fastlane.
Looking at this week's schedule of streams right here on JCTV, starting off Tuesday, May 9th at 9 p.m. Already have happened this week. It was the Slide Jawb Racing League Premier Series, the second race of this season's playoffs for the MF Racing Designs Premier Series, Watkins Glen International. Josh, 2.45-mile road course. Pretty familiar with these guys in terms of the Xfinity cars in iRacing, but only the second road course of the season, and it's in a pretty crucial point in this playoff with second race, like I mentioned, and 3 races to go until we cut down this grid of 10-4.
Well, Adam, I love it because I'm not a competitor out there. These guys, they've got a lot going on for them with some right hand turns at Watkins Glen. And, it is a road course that I think these guys are very familiar with. I know when I come to have to race at road courses myself, Watkins Glen is one that I have circled like every time. You look back at Circuit of the Americas way early in the season, March 7th when we raced there. That track, it is a very rhythm based track. A lot of uh, heavy braking after long straightaways. A ton of quick left right lefts and vice versa. Tonight they call Watkins Glen the speedway of road courses because it is faster. There are heavy braking zones, but um, it's it has a lot less turns. It's a lot shorter than Coda. That I think a lot of drivers are familiar with this track. So for Watkins Glen, I think we're going to see some great racing. I think it might be a little bit more competitive than what Coda was. And talking about being the second race of the playoffs again, like I said, I love it because I'm not a competitor out there. It just makes it that much harder to go out and try to win the championship. I mean, I keep saying, Adam, you want to win the championship this season, you have got to perform everywhere. And you've got Talladega looming as well before, hitting the final four. But, Watkins Glen, it's going to make a lot of these guys have to shine at a track that might be difficult for them. And so I think we're going to see a great show.
I agree, and of course, by the time this airs, it already have happened. So go ahead and go back and watch the season 10 slide job race in Watkins Glen, and also the Coast to Coast Cup Series race Thursday night at Charlotte Motor Speedway, May 11th at 8:30 p.m. right here on JCTV for their throwback race of this season. It's their season 0 essentially, and it is the 6th race of that season. Our third here on JCTV. Josh, what is Charlotte Motor Speedway like for a next gen car? Pretty interesting race in real life there last year for the Coke 600. Of course, a lot shorter for these guys. What we saw on Thursday, but what are you looking to see in that race Thursday?
Yeah, yeah, we only have done just a couple broadcasts for them, and I've not been a part of either one of the broadcasts we have had for them. But from what I understand, is these guys are very competitive. I did watch the end of last week's broadcast, and I'll tell you, I was on the edge of my seat just watching it because of how close it was. So I don't have a lot to go off of for this league performing at Charlotte. But what I do know is pretty much if you have iRacing, you've raced at Charlotte. It's one of the free tracks that iRacing gives to you to start your iRacing career. And so these guys are familiar with it. Charlotte is an iconic track itself. So with the next gens on it, I think it's going to be very similar to what you see pretty much anywhere else with the next gen. It's going to be just great racing, a lot of things that my mind can't think about right now because I'm running Windows 98 with dial-up internet. I think these guys they're going to have to save their tire as well. Tire wear is a big thing in the way that these next gens drive, and so I think if you go out there, you're running up front, and you're just pulling away, you're going to be caught very quickly, and it's one thing that I like about the next gens personally, from my perspective, is uh, being able to save tires. It's something that I personally have struggled with and have gotten better. And for these other guys, they're gonna have to do their best to save the tire wear, to make it around Charlotte. And I think we're gonna see great race, a lot of side by side racing, uh, and should be a good show.
And Friday, a little different track from what we are accustomed to seeing regularly on any schedule, is WWT Raceway, formerly known as Gateway, right outside of St. Louis, in the NAOR series. The fourth race of the season 13 for the NAOR series gets started May 12th at 9 p.m. right here on JCTV this Friday night. Josh, what is that 1 mile and a quarter egg-shaped oval like in iRacing if you've ever driven there yourself?
Yeah, I've had a couple of starts at Gateway and iRacing because of the NASCAR schedule going there and me doing NIS every week. It's an interesting track, to say the least. I've become a fan of it. Uh, watching watching NASCAR go there with their Truck Series and now the Cup Series. I think it's a great track. A little bit different. You mentioned egg shaped, and the one thing that really comes to mind is Darlington. But don't fool yourself. This is nothing like Darlington. I mean, turns 1 and 2 are very different than 3 and 4. 1 and 2 is so much wider and longer in length than 3 and 4 is. So I, I think I think it's really a momentum based track. You've got to set yourself up for each corner, and you can't really do the same thing at all in 1 and 2 that you do in 3 and 4. And I think, and call me crazy for saying this, but it's going to make sense to me. I think, if you think about Pocono turn 3, right? Pocono has 3 different corners itself. And you always hear drivers talk about the corner you want to be set up for at Pocono is turn 3 because that's the one that leads you down to the start finish line. I think if you want to win Gateway, you're gonna have to really perform really well in 3 and 4. Get the launch off of turn 4 to get you down that front straightaway, and we may see a battle to the finish at Gateway. Uh, if it comes down to 3 and 4, I think you could very easily get away with a bump and run. Uh, coming to the checkered flag going into turn 3. So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it for sure, seeing what those guys on Friday nights can do there. So yeah, I'll tell you, I'm excited for that one.
Definitely going to be exciting for those last gen Cup cars at Gateway on Friday night for their 4th race of the season, and on Saturday, the 4th race for the InThePitsNews Truck Series season at Iowa Speedway. Another shorter track, Josh, but less than a mile is Iowa. About I think it is 0.875 miles in length, and we've gone there a couple times before in the past, and it's usually been pretty. Usually, people have opinions one way or the other on Iowa Speedway. First off, what's yours? You're going to be on the racetrack in your 42 truck as always, and what are your expectations for everyone else there at Iowa on Saturday?
I'll be honest. I don't even know if I have driven a NASCAR vehicle at Iowa since I've been on iRacing. I've raced at Iowa before, but with the am I allowed to say IndyCar? I've done a couple races there with the Dollar IR18, and I can't take anything I learned from driving that car and transitioning it over to the truck. So as of right now, I'm not really sure what I'm expecting for myself. For these other guys, I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out throughout the field, seeing what I can do throughout the field as well, continue my momentum. But I think Iowa is going to be challenging for a lot of guys. Um, it I'm personally am thinking that it might be a track where you've got to be so easy getting on the throttle on corner exit. Otherwise, your rear end's gonna kick out. And you're gonna spin. And we see that quite a bit with shorter tracks. Uh, Iowa, it's set up a little bit differently, but it kind of reminds me of a little bit bigger Richmond. And if I take anything from what I know at Richmond, it's another case where if you just get on the throttle too soon, the rear end will kick out. So I think with Iowa, you're going to have to be very easy on the throttle. One, to save tire, but two, not to have the rear end kick out. And we could see a few cautions in that race as well, with drivers struggling for grip. It really all depends on what we're going to see with track temp as well. But I expect we'll see a good show nonetheless, as always, as we see every time on Saturday nights.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well, Josh. It's going to be interesting to see this Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on JCTV. And before we move forward with Fastlane, I want to say the next Slide Job Racing League broadcast is going to be next Tuesday, May 16th at 9 p.m. from Darlington Raceway, track Too Tough to Tame. Fresh off the throwback weekend in NASCAR, it's going to be throwback weekend for Slide Job, right in the middle of the playoffs. It's going to be pretty interesting race for race number 3, with just 2 races to go at that point before we cut our playoff field from 10 to 4. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday at 9 p.m. We'll get started at 8:45. Thanks, Josh. Fastlane is also sponsored by Spooky Games. Check them out in Attleboro, Massachusetts, or online at spooky-games.square.site, or on their Facebook today. Links are in the description.
Hi, I'm Michael Kruger, driver of the Blockbuster Chevy for Piston Broke Racing, and you're watching Fastlane, a JCTV podcast.
So we'll go double file and lights off. So this is an unofficial green, white, checkered attempt. Parker's going to have at least one more good restart. But you can see this top 6, all yellow banners, all playoff drivers here in the top 6. Parker, Mann, Moreno, Kilroe, Thorpe, and Nupp. But then the row behind them, it's Blaze McKinney and Noah Mayuri. They're battling for the dash for cash. So 2 rows of two different battles going on here. Then you see Colton Lights, Brian Dees right there in the top 10. Hunter Karsten right now running 11th, a really good run for this 13 machine as well. Talking about Hunter Karsten, he's run 2 races so far this season. Best finish coming at Bristol with 11th. So we're looking to see if at 13, he's looking to see if he can improve that best finish as well here tonight. Looking to see if he can try to crack the top 10. So, as they make their way through 3 and 4, the pace car is going to take that hard left turn down pit road. Parker, the control car once again. Can he have at least one last good restart as they head to the Geico restart zone? The green flag is out. We are back underway. 2 laps to go in the C2 Graphics 200. And a big jump by Parker to get clear out front.
He did that very well to get out front. Now it is Kilroe and Mann side by side for that second position.
Luke Nupp right there as well. Kilroe drifted up a little bit. Nupp trying to shove it in there. Can't quite get there. But Parker is going to lead us to the white flag. One more lap here at Nashville Superspeedway. Does anybody have anything for that number 48 machine? They're going to have to do it now. Mann trying anything. Some sliding in the background. It sounds like indeed Pacheco and Gazzola look like they are slow on the racetrack, but it's not going to matter. Through 3 and 4 for the final time, you see McKinney trying to shove it in there in the background, shoving Moreno up top. Meanwhile, out front, Jonathan Parker is going to win here in Nashville as they crash back in the back. Sliding sideways, everybody trying to make it through, still wrecking. Dylan Parker piling into Brian Dees.
Holy cow.
But the one thing that can't be argued, and coming first here in the C2 Graphics 200, Jonathan Parker scoring win number 2 on the season. First off, John, congratulations on the win.
Thank you, Dawson.
So coming in, to this race, to kick off the playoffs, this is your quest for a championship in another league here on JCTV, and it's off to a pretty good start. A dominant performance here tonight. Take us through, for most part, that green flag run that we had there through the majority of that race. What was that like for you as that run went on? Just, the laps kept going, it stayed green, and just all about the strategy, pretty much what it came down to.
Yeah, I was just, for the first part of it, I was just, running my own pace, just letting the race come to me, and I noticed after the first pit stop, I believe that some people were going to try and make it only one more, like what Dalton did, and because that first lap caution made it really interesting. The way the fuel sizes get limited, I think it's limited to 70 in this league. It sometimes make things unintentionally interesting, is the way I'll put it. So it's the game we have to play, and I wasn't going to give him my track position to go do that. And so I just had to go out there and try and outpace him, and I think we did a pretty good job of that. Sartaj, he short pit us pretty good on what would be the last pit stop, or for me anyway. And we were able to catch up to him, and just as soon as I thought it was done, caution come out. I mean, if Adam was here, he would tell you that's a script that has always happened, no matter what racing game it is. I'll be leading, and it could be by a mile, doesn't matter. Caution come out, and usually I end up getting wrecked. But thankfully tonight that didn't happen, and I need as many points as I can get because I can't turn right to save my life. So just pray for me next week. I walk this line.
Yeah, speaking of Watkins Glen coming up, you have a good cushion now with this win. This puts you in solidly, unofficially third in the points, or technically it would be second. It's tied for second. You're 3 points above the cut line right now. It's a very slim margin, but you still are you're 8 points, excuse me, you're 3 points behind the points leader. So my math is wrong as usual. But still,
DCC.
it's a gap that you've got. But also, too, I gotta feel like, even though those final restarts there were not what you wanted to see, it was still a good test for you for the rest of this playoff. So what were those like for you, knowing that you were able to get that good jump as the leader, at least, to get out of the field and clear out front and maintain the race lead?
Yeah, I actually learned from the InThePitsNews Truck Series race here. That Saturday is basically every Saturday is at 8:00. By the way, if y'all want to tune in, but yeah, I learned from that race a season ago because I had pretty similar control of the race. I was just kind of cruising, running my own pace. A caution comes out, and I got loose in 1 and 2, and then Mikey made a through-wide move, got the lead, and with those trucks, they're so dang air-dependent. I just couldn't get around them, and I kind of kept that in the back of my mind, so I knew more to hit my marks. I got very good jumps, like you said, and I actually learned from that, so I'm kind of learning as I go, but we're getting there, lap by lap, race by race.
Well, you are the second driver now to have multiple wins on the season here in the Slide Job Racing League. And obviously the momentum swinging in your favor with that dominant win here tonight. But what do you gotta, who you gotta thank? Teammates, sponsors. What got this 48 in victory lane here tonight, and put yourself in a good spot to start this playoff run?
I gotta thank Chad and Earl, Chad on the box and Earl Barban on the spotter stand. Had a good job, and I gotta thank everybody back in the PlayStation party. They're probably having fun right now. I really appreciate those guys. Keep me entertained during the race, to say the least. And I think React and JBM, everybody there, they do a great job. And Lowe's Cobalt Tools. Shout out to Jackson. He's in Disney right now, Jackson Glen Austin. And shout out to Christian Pacheco, because his dumbass did not have his tires checked when he come down pit road for his first green flag stop. So that completely ruined his day. Christian Pacheco stinks. And I got to shout out to everybody from New Jersey, because it's been a good couple days. Between Ryan Trix winning on Saturday, Trix winning the Cup race yesterday, and now another Jersey boy won here today. So it's pretty good for the New Jersey guys.
Alrighty, that is your race winner, Jonathan Parker. He leads a dominant performance to victory here tonight at Nashville Series Away. Congrats again, John.
Thank you, Dawson and Josh. Appreciate it.
He's gonna try pinching him though.
He's going to try, but right now the tire advantage is there for Parker. But again, I talk about, here's where Ethan can play a little bit of a role in how his race shapes out. If he's doing exactly what he's doing, forcing Parker to take the very bottom the whole racetrack, and he can actually hold him down there and not let him clear him, as Parker's going to clear, the tires could get burned up. But right now it's going to be Parker's race and how he handles it.
Jonathan Parker, for the second time this week, holding a lead with a race that has so far only had one caution up to the point with 12 laps to go. It's one of the things this league likes to do is have some old school rules, but it is all voted on by the drivers. And I've talked about it a lot last season. And, Josh Arnold, he believes in the hashtag. He does not want to make the decisions on his own. He wants the drivers to have a say for almost everything. That's why this league has gone 13 seasons strong. Jonathan Parker, he's going to take the white flag one more time around here in
Kentucky. And he's going to work his way through 3 and 4. Jonathan Parker, career win number 2, second win of the season as well. What a race by Jonathan Parker. Jonathan Parker, first off, my biggest question to you is...
Oh gosh, where could this go?
You had a dominating performance. We had a caution on lap 1. As we were catching the end of the race here, were you having flashbacks of Tuesday?
I'm always counting down the laps. Once again, wait, Adam, Adam's not here. Once again, Adam knows that script way too well. It's literally a mirror image. I thought we were gonna get a caution for you to go, but this league's a little different because we don't do green, white, checkered. So if I get to like 4-3 to go, I know I don't have to work like the race is over. So I gotta think like it's 2003. But yeah, I was having flashbacks. It's a good call out there. But yeah, today was a. I didn't expect really to go like that because I don't really like Kentucky that much.
Well, you had a interesting strategy call, I think, and I pointed it out that you like to go later. Canfield is kind of doubting the strategy, and I'll be honest, I was a little bit too. You went so much later than everybody else, but you were still able to pass everybody and put a 2.8 second gap between yourself and Ethan. Did you think that it was gonna work?
I knew it was gonna work. It depends on like what I'm thinking at the time, my position, my strategy. You say I do tend to go later more, but it all depends on what position I'm in and what others around me do. It all depends on where they pit in the fuel run and all that. Because depending on how the races go, I have no problem being the first one to pit road. I'm usually just doing whatever people aren't doing. But yeah, I knew, because I didn't even save my tires that last run. I just put on the tires and went, F yeah, let's just burn these things to the ground, and I did. And I caught up to Ethan, and I got around them. I just want to give a big shout out, because it's pretty hard when you got people on a bunch of different strategies. I'm going to give a shout to everyone, because they kept it clean. Even though there's people with different closing rates. So I appreciate everyone for keeping it clean, being aware. That was I don't know how it looked up here in the booth, but it was pretty interesting to play chess again. That's why I love racing. It really is a high-speed game of chess. When you pit, what line you run. Even with the 550 cars, where I feel like it takes a little bit away from the drivers in terms of what they can do talent-wise, there's still things you could do to really separate yourself.
2 wins on the season so far in the first 3 races. We head to Gateway next week. What are you looking forward to there?
No idea. Don't have the track yet. I don't even own it. I've never taken a lap around there. So next week it's like I'm a rookie in the pits news again. Back to square one. I'm just learning by the seat of my pants. So that'll either go really good or really bad. So stay tuned next week.
And I also want to ask you another question. I'm sure you've heard about my challenge to a driver that can win 3 races in a week, broadcasted on JCTV. You take it 2 so far, but you're not guaranteed to race in the InThePitsNews Truck Series. Does this change your mind? Do you race ITPN tomorrow?
Wait, when there was a challenge, I've never heard of this. Why didn't you tell me about this earlier?
I issued a challenge to a driver with a lot of drivers crossing over between series and racing in all 3. Issued a challenge to see if somebody could do it. Win all 3 league races on JCTV in the same week. And this was, of course, before we picked up the Thursday night league, which you don't run in. So this was just a couple weeks ago that I issued that challenge. Right after you took the win at Las Vegas.
I hate Phoenix too. Why are you doing this to me, dude? And just a little bit, because I felt like I could have maybe had a winning truck last year. Things didn't go. Oh. Look, I work tonight. I'm probably gonna come home early because I got personal time. Take it to celebrate. Because every time I win these damn races, I can't just have a drink, and I want to have a drink after I win one of these races. So I'm coming home early and I'm doing that. Dang it! But.
All right. Well,
I'll see. Well, we'll see. We'll see how when I come home, I have a drink, go to sleep. We'll see how I feel when I wake up. All right.
All right. Well, before I let you go, who do you have to give a shout out to?
I'm gonna give a shout out first of all to the foundation again on my car, the Faith Fight Finish Foundation, Dak Prescott's foundation. He won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award for the work that he does with this charity. So if you want to make a donation or just see what they're about, go to faithfightfinish.org. A couple of other things that they do research for, they help out, and I hold pretty close to my heart. So regardless of what NFL team you like, none of that really matters. This is all about bettering the world. So go check it out, faithfightfinish.org. And I also want to thank Chad Noah for keeping me calm. Earl is funny. I'll tell you that if any of you have the Earl spotter. I'm not just I know I say that every week. I do have the Chad and Earl spotter pack. So if you're a Jimmy fan, you got to have that, by the way. I got to give a shout out to Ethan Fonseca Moreno. He did a really good job tonight. I feel bad because we were, I guess, sparring a little bit this week, both for Nashville and Kentucky, and paid off for both of us, really. He was pretty good at Nashville, just got stuck in traffic, and he was outstanding today. And I think my performance improved a little bit, so I give a shout out to him. And shout out to Jackson Glenn Austin. He popped in to the voice chat, and he's funny, and he might be at Walmart right now. But also give a shout out to Meliello, the best soda on the planet.
All right. Well, congrats on the race victory, Jonathan Parker. Second win of the season.
Thank you, Josh.
Can Parker hang on, or can someone else steal the win from him? We'll have to see here as they head through 3 and 4 to the Geico restart zone. And the green flag is out. 2 laps remaining here at Phoenix. Parker didn't get as big a jump, I don't think. We'll have to see here as they make their way towards turn 1.
Alonso with a pretty good restart. He was trying getting to the inside of Josh Coppernoll through the dogleg, couldn't quite do it. Gonna have to fight with him through 1 and 2, but Cameron Caldwell is still right in front of him there. He just barely clears Coppernoll off of turn 2, but he's gonna fight back with him onto the back straightaway.
Coppernoll to the inside of Caldwell for second, but coming to the line, it's going to be the white flag. One more lap. Roy Crump had issues, spun around to the back. We are going to be on the final lap, though. Parker out front by 0.5 of a second. Caldwell's going to have to mount a late charge if he can. He's too far back to send it in. Through 3 and 4.
Coming to the line.
Jonathan Parker is going to sweep the week and pick up the victory here at Phoenix. Oh, Jason Gross just sends it in the wall, hits Michael Kruger at the end. At the line, Alonso Chicano just beats out Josh Coppernoll for third. Indeed, I have. I have gotten a hold of the one and only Jonathan Parker busting out the broom in victory lane, because guess what? You've just swept the week here on JCTV. What's that like for you, John, to be able to kind of come through here, coming in tonight pretty much just kind of last second, and being able to, not steal the win, but, to pull off, your 6th career victory in the InThePitsNews Truck Series. But on top of that, winning a race in all 3 series throughout this week.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal. I had no idea what to expect going into this race. And as I discussed at the top of the broadcast, didn't just not qualify. EOL'd myself, so start last, and that first stage it was pretty calm. Just kind of did what I said I was gonna do. Just let them come to me. Drove up to about 10th by the stage, which is that's kind of reminds me of what Chase Elliott did back when he won his championship here, because he started from the back. Jimmy started from the back that race too. He drove up pretty good too. So kind of mimicked that, and then the rest it was mostly executing restarts because it was caution after caution. So and this thing was lights out on restarts. It was good on that long run too. I had to use my tires more to pass people, and I was matching the leader's pace, if not faster than them. So it was a interesting race. It was entertaining when we could race, but I got to clean the cautions up a little bit. And I don't even know how to explain. Like, I cannot believe that I won 3 races in a row this week. That's insane. I would have never had imagined things like that. And I got to thank you, Dallas Allen. I got to thank you. I got to thank Josh for bringing it up last night. And I got to thank Ethan he said maybe about this exact quote, "Go make history," something like that. Go make your history. That was the last thing he said when we had a private conversation. I was like, all right, I'll race. So, yeah, pretty surreal.
Yeah, going and making history, and in limited starts here as well in this league. Usually you're going to be in the booth with us, but you've got limited starts to the league. We conned you pretty much into running tonight, and it wound up paying off. So, but just with these limited starts, so what's that make you feel like in these races? Does that change how you race these compared to how you were racing them last year?
In terms of how I race people, like side by side, I always race them without most respect. I don't really do anything crazy. I'm very tame compared to most people that you might see on these broadcasts. So in terms of that, it doesn't change it. But in terms of strategy, yeah, that could completely change how I call a race. Because number one, I'm obviously not full-time, not running for points. So I could just kind of go with whatever is going to get me track position for down the future. You saw that a couple times throughout the race, throughout those cautions. Because when you pit was pretty crucial. And that helped me a little bit get some track position on those guys. But in terms of the actual racing, I always race people with respect, and if I can't pass them cleanly, then I'm just not good enough. So I don't really like to move people.
Well, alrighty, with that though, Victory Lane podium is up to you. Teammates, sponsors, who do you want to shout out? What got you here in Victory Lane tonight?
I gave a couple shout outs already for you guys. I think the PBR chat, because I wasn't there today. I wasn't in the PlayStation party like I usually am, and it was a lot of fun being with those guys, seeing how they go about executing races, and I learned some things from them. I hope they learned some stuff from me, because just in terms of my thought process, and they're hella cool guys, so appreciate them. I think Meliello and Lowe's, Cobalt Tools, Chad and Earl on top of the box and the top of the spotter stand. They're awesome, and got to give a shout out to Ethan. I know his day didn't go the way it should have. He was wicked fast. I feel really bad for him. And give a shout out to Jared Wilson and everybody at JBM. And I want to leave this for last. Big, ginormous shout out to Jackson Tate. It was his first start in the league. He had an unreal race. He did great. He had some pretty good pace, pretty good on those long runs, and he kept his nose clean for the most part. He did an outstanding job, and I hope he races more, because that's a name that once he gets the hang of it, you're going to be seeing it a lot, I promise you.
Alrighty, that is your race winner here, Jonathan Parker. He completes the sweep this week, winning at Phoenix. Congrats again, John.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You see that 81 truck parked in Victory Lane.
Fastlane, a JCTV podcast, is sponsored by FACES, the National Craniofacial Association.
Hey, it's Ethan Fonseca Moreno, driver of the 43 Martin Truex Jr. Foundation, JCTV Camaro, and you're listening to Fastlane on the JCTV broadcast.
Well, now it's time to look at the results of the last week's results of the races right here on JCTV. So Josh, let's start with the Slide Jawb Racing League MF Racing Designs Premier Series. Season 10 playoffs opening race at Nashville Superspeedway. Of course, we've already talked about Jonathan Parker sweeping the week, but it began with a dominating victory in Nashville. Beat Sotaj Man, who finished second, Dalton Carroll was third, Luke Knupp was fourth, and Michael Thorpe Jr. was fifth to open up these playoffs. Josh, quick impressions of that race at Nashville the other night.
Quick impressions. I thought that it was a great race. It definitely was the opposite of my expectations with how things turned out. A long, long, long green flag run. So I'll tell you, those guys they were great, and it was awesome to see what they could do.
Now we'll move on to the Coast to Coast Cup Series 5th race of Season 2, halfway mark in this season. Our second broadcast right here on JCTV was won by Ali Reeves, got the lead late over Brian Lorenzo, and was able to hold him off. Top 5 were all pretty close together, and Lorenzo with a thrilling drive to go from 5th to 2nd in the last couple of laps. Josh, I know you watched a few laps of that race, the end of it. What did you think of that first mile and a half race we covered of the Coast to Coast Cup Series right here on JCTV?
I'll tell you, it was kind of racing that is edge of the seat racing. When you're watching a race like that, it was so unpredictable what was going to happen. And I just watched, the last few laps, and I wasn't so sure that, who was going to win it. So it was really exciting, and I'm telling you, I'm really excited to see what the rest of the season has in store based off what we've just already have watched so far.
And looking at the point standings, halfway, like I mentioned, with the drop weeks in effect, Cody Rivera, the winner of the Daytona Road Course, which we saw 2 weeks ago on JCTV, leads the points right now with a 21-point gap over Ali Reeves, that winner at Chicagoland. But Cody Rivera, the only repeat winner this season so far. James Thurston dropped to third after falling out of the race at Chicago, and Ellis Wells sits fourth with Brian Lonzo ranked in fifth right now. Josh, way different point format here in this series. What do you think of this point system and the 10-week sprint we have with just two drop weeks, really?
Well, Adam, I think the points format is definitely unique. They've got an interesting points format here, and I think that if you want to win a championship, you really have to stay consistent up towards the front. You really can't have any bad races at all. So a unique system, definitely.
And then on Friday at the Kentucky Speedway for race 3 of the season 13 NAOR series, it was Jonathan Parker yet again leading over 100 laps en route to the victory. He held off Ethan Fonseca Moreno yet again for another 1-2 finish there between those two. Chris Wright, the reigning series champion, finished in third for his first podium of the season. Zachary Meredith finished fourth, and Hunter Peach rounded out the top 5. Josh, you were in the booth at Kentucky on Friday night. We've already talked about Jonathan Parker's domination. Let's talk about a little bit more about the rest of the field and those guys inside the top 10. What do you think about their performances on a second mile and a half trip this season?
Yeah, I think it was one of those races where the cream was rising towards the top, especially with the long green flag runs that this race or produced rather. And I mean, you mentioned Jonathan Parker's dominant performance, but for everybody else, it was trying to be that man to you know finish second at best. If there was a late yellow, try to overtake and pass Jonathan Parker, but ultimately, I think for the rest of the guys, their races, Ethan finishing second, Chris Wright first podium as you mentioned of the season. That's huge. He's a defending champion and has struggled so far. So it was nice for him to have that podium finish, and some of the other guys as well. Just coming up to the top. So um, I'm impressed with a lot of the drivers' runs, and you can definitely really saw the cream rise into the top in that one.
Yeah, you mentioned Chris Wright struggles this season. Just 2 top 10s in the 3 races. Looks good on paper, but they really haven't been those great finishes he's been looking for and he's been accustomed to. And like what he got Friday night at Kentucky, finishing on the podium, like we mentioned. He sits 10th in the current point standings, Josh. Seems far out of it, but he's only a 25-point separation between he and the leader.
Still early in the season, and with the tournament style uh, playoff system that the Di9 Designs NAOR series has, Chris Wright, he's not by any means out of it. So a rough early start to the season, but I think he'll be all right. I think he can easily turn it around, and come the tournament, he'll be seated pretty high.
We're talking about those higher seeds right now as they stand just 3 weeks deep. Hunter Peach is currently the point leader with his 3 top 10 finishes this season. Second is Jonathan Parker with his 2 wins on the year and at the mile-and-a-half races, but he has a DNF in the other race, which is the main part of that 11-point gap between he and Peach. PC Wygant tied in that second spot with a win at that Iowa race, also 11 points back, and Joshua Arnold, 3 top 10s on the year, sits fourth, and Jose Ruiz has snuck his way quietly into the top 5.
Adam, I'll tell you another driver that's up here in the top 12, sitting 7th right now, 22 points out from points lead. Donnie Kite, he was really impressing me last season, as he was always starting to find his way up towards the top. And Josh Arnold actually did a mock bracket for what it would have looked like last season if they had used this format last season. And Donnie Kite, he was, I think, the third or the would have been like the third or the fourth seed. And it's just simply because of consistency. And you saw how he just got so much better as the season uh, went went on. Right now, Donnie Kite sitting 7th. I think he'll improve. As this is just such a young season, there's still a lot of races to go. Um, so right now, sitting 7th and looking for more.
Now we're looking at Saturday's results from Phoenix Raceway, the third race of the fourth season for the Blazer Sim Racing League in the InThePitsNews Truck Series. Jonathan Parker completed his weekend sweep, winning in all 3 of the full-time leagues right here on JCTV, doing so as the reigning champion in that league in his first start since then. Josh, of course, you were in that race. We've already talked a lot about it, so we'll run down the top 5 real quick and then you can give any other shout-outs you want to give here. So Jonathan Parker leading 54 laps. Wasn't quite the most dominant night he has historically, but still right place, right time in a race really difficult to pass. And Cameron Caldwell, runner-up, Alonso Chicano third. Our man Josh Coppernoll came home fourth with that 42 machine, and Joshua Arnold finished in fifth, where he started the night.
If I were to give a shout out to a driver, their finishing position, that's not myself, of course, finishing fourth, I'm going to go with Michael Kruger. And the reason why is because he led 25 laps, he finished 8th. He was actually running really well at a track that has pretty much been, if you will, his kryptonite. And he needed a good race. I think he was hungry for a good race at Phoenix, and he got exactly what he needed, and that was a good solid finish. I know he wanted more. I think all of PBR wanted to see him finish a little bit higher than 8th, but it was a little bit of a struggle. He did get involved in an accident, so he was already a little bit on the other end of the stick. He was on a different strategy than almost all of the other drivers in the field. The only other one that was on the same strategy as him was actually myself. And then when he came down to pit road, I stayed out, and he just was trying to work his way back up to the front. So, I really have to give a shout out to Michael Kruger for, finally getting that finish at Phoenix that he deserves, and a good solid top 10.
And I want to give another shout out to Ryan Bogey, who finished in the 9th position. Joined the sim late. In Discord, he said he was probably just going to start and park the race and not really try most of the night, but he managed to stay on the lead lap the entire time, and just through attrition was able to sneak inside the top 15, and then the last couple restarts was able to push inside the top 10, bringing home 9th. So that was a good finish, I thought, for that 21 truck. Now looking at the points after 3 races in the InThePitsNews Truck Series, Alonso Chicano leads the league right now with 3 for 3 in top 10s. Michael Walls, our winner at Homestead Miami, was crashed out of Phoenix, so he now sits 15 points behind after being the early point leader 2 weeks in. Alex Kerfin has moved up to 3rd, and Cameron Caldwell in 4th, with Justin Durand 5th.
Yeah, I think one thing that really doesn't surprise me here, Adam, is Alonso Chicano leading the points. You look at the season before season 3, when it was pretty much a Jonathan Parker season. Alonso Chicano was up front, up top, and ended up taking the championship. So with Jonathan Parker only doing a maximum of 5 starts, of course, not running for a championship this season, I'm not surprised to see Alonso Chicano up there. And with a 15-point gap, more or less, either, he actually hit over 1,000 laps led in his Blazers Sim Racing InThePitsNews Truck Series career this past weekend at Phoenix. So Alonso, he doesn't have that win yet on the season, but it's going to come pretty quickly, I would imagine, if not this weekend at Iowa.
Yeah, and shout out for Hunter Peach and Nick Hapiak for 2 rookies being inside the top 12 right now as it stands. Peach been really strong in his starts, really, when he's been able to finish and be in contention for top 10 finishes. And Michael Kruger winning at Daytona, of course, he is locked in to the playoffs if he is able to make enough starts. We assume he is going to make that threshold to do so and clinch himself into the playoffs. So things are going to shape up a lot, I think, in this back half of the grid, though.
Yeah, Adam, you are absolutely correct. Of course, Blazer Sim Racing and the InThePitsNews Truck Series still a young season as well. Only a few races into their season, and I think it's been a rough start for a lot of drivers. I mean, you look at who's sitting 11th, Nick Hapiak, not having a top 10. He's the only one in the top 12 in points that don't have a top 10. So I think drivers that are on the outside looking in, they're going to start to really shuffle around as well. As for some guys, it's just been a struggle. So I'm telling you, we if we come back and look at this here in a few weeks, I think you're going to see a lot of drivers that are different than what we see now.
So now we move on to this week's action, beginning with Season 10 playoffs in the Slide Job Racing League. Second race was the Burnham Motorsports Designs Grand Prix at Watkins Glen International. Josh, once again, you were in the booth for that race. A race dominated by Dylan Parker. Quick thoughts of that race on the road course in the middle of this playoff?
I thought it was a really good race itself. We did see at Circuit of the Americas, Dylan Parker and Sartaj Man absolutely battling for that race. And Sartaj going into Watkins Glen wasn't as optimistic about coming to Watkins Glen as he was at Circuit of the Americas. Dylan Parker, he did not leave anything off the table from Circuit of the Americas coming to Watkins Glen. He absolutely put on a clinic. He won the pole, although he did not lead the first 7 laps, as those were led by Ethan Fonseca Moreno. But Dylan Parker, he just, once he got the lead, he was pulling away. There was no looking back, and he won by a big margin.
You mentioned Ethan Fonseca Moreno led 7 laps. He crossed the finish line in 2nd place, right where he started. Sautage Man moved up the grid to 3rd. Luke Nupp finished 4th, and Michael Thorpe Jr. rounded out our top 5. Josh, one thing that happened in that race, Jonathan Parker, he had an incident top of the S's onto the back straightaway. Lucky he didn't get hit broadsided the way he was sitting there. Was able to recover, get back into the mix and pass some cars. On his way up through the field, though, he had more contact, this time with Caden Atkins.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up Jonathan Parker because all of this actually happened right after the competition caution. So, quickly, if I may, the Slide Job Racing League road course rules are that there's going to be a competition caution really early in the race. Watkins Glen, it happened to be at the conclusion of lap 8. So when they went back green, Jonathan Parker, at that point, there was no other guaranteed yellow from that point on. And Jonathan Parker, he, as you mentioned, had that spin, a little bit of contact, and he fell like a rock. And he had to claw his way back up to 8th. I'm telling you, as much as I'm impressed with Dylan Parker's run to absolutely dominate this race and take away the win, I am just as much impressed with Jonathan Parker and him being able to overcome his early race misfortunes to finish in 8th place and keep him on track for what could be a very tough playoffs to get him into the Final Four. So big kudos to Jonathan Parker for being able to finish 8th.
Yeah, just 2 more races before the Final Four in the Slide Job Racing League playoffs. Going to be Darlington this Tuesday night, and then Talladega after that. But looking at the playoff grid right now after Watkins Glen, 12 races deep into this 10th season, Sautage Man continues to lead the points after Jonathan Parker's misfortune in that race we spoke of falls a spot to 3rd. Dalton Kilrow, 1 point ahead of him, sits 7, trailing Sautage Man in that 2nd position. Luke Nupp sits in 4th, and Michael Thorpe Jr. tied with him there. So Josh, these top 5 are separated by 13 points. How difficult is that going to be to enter Darlington, knowing everyone's just right over each other's shoulder for these top 5 spots, going for just 4 positions here?
Darlington being known as a track too tough to tame, I think these 5 drivers that are separated with the 13 points, as you mentioned, it's going to be a huge challenge for them. Darlington is a wild animal, and I think it's not just a track that anybody can show up and race at. I think in some ways there's some tracks you can show up to with not a lot of practice, go out there and finish well. Darlington, I think you have to know what you're doing, and for these guys, uh, being so close in points, it's just going to add that much more pressure. I mentioned it at one point that I think the best thing these guys have going for them is doing B-Fix this week, because iRacing is at Darlington, and it'll be great race experience for these guys. I know I was spotting for a driver in a B Open, rather, not a B Fixed, but a B Open, and Michael Thorpe Jr. was in that race. So he was getting familiar with the Xfinity car at Darlington, albeit on an open setup rather than a fixed setup. But, I think that is just going to be very beneficial to have all those race laps going into this league race to ultimately help set you up to get into the Final Four, especially with Talladega looming right after Darlington.
And now, Josh, we mentioned on last week's program Dylan Parker's huge penalty for the actions he pulled in Nashville Superspeedway last Tuesday. He went on to do what we said he would have to do to keep his name in contention, and that was win Watkins Glen and dominate. But his mission's not over. He's still a race lengths out from the next position in the playoff standings, and he's going to have to hope for some kind of miracle to even sniff the top 4 in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I have no doubt that he'll be racing up front at Darlington and at Talladega. He is a very aggressive driver. He's always up front, always competing. But, at this point, it's not just him going out there and controlling his car. He needs some luck on his side for some of his competitors to have misfortune so he can try to gain points. He said that he really didn't gain many points on his competitors after Watkins Glen because all but one of the playoff drivers finished inside the top 10. The only one that didn't was Mark Frimpong, who is currently now 8th in standings, and it's still over 40 points of a gap between Frimpong and Dylan Parker. So he's got a lot on his plate if he wants to try to compete for a championship.
Yeah, Josh, absolutely. Thanks for looking at these results with me and looking at these point standings the way they stand right now. Of course, we're going to be keeping close eyes on them as everything happens, these next couple of races, everything right here on JCTV. Thanks, Josh.
I'm Jonathan Parker, driver of the number 92 Faith Fight Finish Foundation Chevrolet, and you're watching Fastlane, a JCTV podcast. Don't go anywhere.
Earlier this week, Brett Bennett, driver of the 47 SBOD Ford in the InThePitsNews Truck Series, caught up with our Jonathan Parker to preview this weekend's race at Iowa Speedway Saturday at 8 p.m. right here on JCTV. They're going to talk about tire wear, fuel runs here at Iowa Speedway, the track itself, and a little bit more about the league as a whole. They kind of go off topic just a little bit. Unfortunately, my mic was not recorded. I was with them asking them a few questions and talking here and there, but that was not recorded, so I had to edit around that. Hopefully you guys enjoy this interview with them, or the segment with them, I should say, and hopefully they give a good preview of the race that's going to happen at Iowa this weekend. It's the In the Pits News track preview, featuring Brett Bennett and Jonathan Parker.
I'm expecting a lot of it's going to depend on how the race goes, but I'm expecting a tire management race. This my practice today was I was definitely burning off the right front, and definitely there's some stuff I think I can do to improve on that. But even with that improvement, I don't think it's going to be a good number. I think it could be a race where you'll see a mixture of strategies. The timing of the runs kind of reminds me of Dover, even though there isn't quite as much fall off. Although it feels like there's more fall off than Dover because the amount of the setup goes loose to tight. But we'll see how that plays out. It'll be a race that's all about trying to save tire if we get long runs. Otherwise, it's going to be trying to keep it from getting loose and getting it hooked up on the short runs, which that's kind of what Phoenix turned into. And hopefully we get a little bit greener race than we had at Phoenix, but we'll see. We got big fields this year, which is great. Like, I'm not going to complain about cautions when we got bigger fields. Like, that's just kind of part of what you tend to get with it.
There's going to be a lot of cautions. I was straight up a harder track than Phoenix, and we couldn't go 5 laps at Phoenix without wrecking. So if it's up mostly the same people, we're gonna get a bunch of cautions. Because some of those cautions weren't. No. You're gonna hold on for a second.
Sorry.
It's okay. Because I went back and watched some of the race. I didn't get to rewatch the whole race yet. There were some cautions out there that were just it was just people having no plan, and other than I'm going to this corner as hard as I can. I don't care what's in front of me. And I saw some of that on the racetrack where I had to just stomp on the brakes. I'm like, what the hell are people doing? And so that's more of just a courtesy problem.
Well, I have my feelings on how that race played out for me that I will not share at the moment.
You can share it if you want to.
I'm not
gonna get. None of it happened to me, so I'm not gonna call anyone out in particular.
I've already gotten in trouble for being disrespectful because he apologized and he didn't mean to do it. So I know he didn't mean to. It just was frustrating.
That's fine. That doesn't mean that we can't be better.
Yeah. Well, once again, you're gonna have to edit that, Adam. But
he know what he signed up for.
I think we'll actually have a cleaner race in Phoenix. Personally,
I hope you're right.
This track is just. Phoenix is really conducive to putting drivers in situations that are going to lead to accidents. Turns 3 and 4 are pretty heavy braking at Phoenix. At Iowa, it's almost always trail braking into the corners. You're carrying a lot more speed. Later in the run, you're going to be getting a lot of pace. So, especially if we get green flag pit stops, you might see some incidents there where the pace differential is going to come into play between new and old tires. But from a driver's standpoint, you're not driving in as deep and you're not braking as hard. So I don't think there's going to be as much of an issue with people running each other over this week. Plus, you also don't have the stupidity of restarts at Phoenix where people are taking it 3-4 wide in the turns 1 and 2. If you're taking it 3 or 4 wide at Iowa, you're a lot braver person than I am.
Don't count it out, trust me. But yeah, you're right about the restart thing because the way that stupid start finish line is, it just dive 4 or 5 wide and it doesn't matter. Saw Michael Kruger. He showed me. I think it was after the it had to have been after the race where he took it to the apron 3-4 wide. I think Ross Chastain might have pulled that. And regardless, he gained 5 spots from that. He went from 17th to 12th or 11th. Insane.
Yeah, I had a couple really good restarts too where I did similar stuff because you just kind of had to because the way the tires were wearing there. The way it was whenever we would actually get a run of more than especially stage 1, which I guess was probably the longest run was stage 1.
Yeah, that was the longest run.
Because somehow we were really good during stage 1 and then we lost all talent apparently as soon as we got done with it.
No, not we. Because this is the stat this. Okay, I was the only one with a 0x.
To be fair, I was a 0x other than getting dumped.
Other than the incident, yeah.
Other than getting dumped and then getting hit by somebody who didn't hold their brake after wrecking. Those are my only incidents as far as I remember. And maybe I got another 4x because every 4x I got in that race was somebody hitting my rear bumper. So
Michael Walls, I'm blaming him.
So in my opinion, if I'm getting hit in the rear, that's not my fault. Unless I'm intentionally brake checking, which was not the case. So, but yeah, Iowa's going to be an interesting race in terms of what we'll get. I really think the strategy, if we do run green in stage 2, big if, but if we do run green in stage 2, which that's another good thing about Iowa, is it's a lot more likely a wreck here because of the increased speed you're carrying is going to cause more issues. It's going to, instead of being able to cause a wreck, keep going, you're more likely to get killed in that first wreck than I think you are at Phoenix. But that said, if we do get long runs, it'll be interesting to see what strategies people go with. I have it, doing my math, I thought the one stop is a little bit faster, but I turned damage off when I was doing my practice run, so I didn't have to pull in if I hit the wall ever. And by the end of the run, you are having to give up so much time. If you get back to the gas at all too early, it is just not going to steer off of turn 4, and you're going to hit the wall. So I could easily see a 2-stop working, especially if you do a little bit better job of managing your tires early in the run. I think a 1-stop might be a little faster, but a lot of it's also going to be, do you think there's going to be a caution? Because when we get the caution, could play a big thing if we go green for a while. I I know this year I'm thinking in this league right now, the way it's been so far this year, you might want to stay out as long as possible. But we'll see what happens. A lot of it's going to depend where I'm at on track. If I'm a lot less aggressive with strategy if I'm leading than if I'm mired in the back of the pack. But I'm hoping I can get a good race. I know last time we went here, Gracias dominated, but I was really fast early until I took the lead on the first lap, ran 2 really fast laps, ran the fastest lap of the race on lap 2, and then lap 3 spun out. So hopefully we don't repeat that, but if I can find the same kind of pace on the short run that I had then, could really play out well for me. But then again, I think I was not as good at saving tires as I am now. I've learned more and more about being willing to back it off on the short run and give up that little bit of pace for that pace late in the run. So it'll be interesting because there's also multiple grooves here as well. We'll see. You can hook the bottom. I like the middle a lot of the times, but you can also go up to the fence and run it too. A lot of it's just going to be where you're feeling on your tires. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
So I haven't driven the truck at Iowa in a while. But I have driven the Gen 6 car at Iowa a couple weeks ago in NAOR. And let me tell you, that thing bottomed out so bad in 1 and 2. It didn't matter which line you run. If you were on the high side, you bottomed out, you went to the fence. If you were on the bottom, you bottomed out and went out half a lane. It didn't matter how hard you drove in. That setup sucked, quite frankly. I don't know if the truck is like that. Is it like that at all?
It's not as bad. I have noticed here you don't want to run the absolute high side in 1 and 2 because the bumps by the fence, they're the worst by the fence. Like, it doesn't matter what car you're in, unless your setup is suspension is like the softest suspension ever, those bumps are going to unsettle you in anything. The middle is probably the smoothest. The bottom, the bumps might unsettle you a little bit, but you can ride them pretty easily. You just don't want to, if you can hit them wrong. There's 1 or 2 times in my run where I would hit them wrong on the bottom. But I think it's one of those tracks where you're going to kind of want to be down on the bottom later in the run. At the same time, though, I'm not sure on the tire wear what lane's the best because I didn't really get a good look at that. It felt like sometimes that I was using less tire running the middle, or running in the middle felt like it was using less tire, but at the same time, it's going to be a little risky because especially early in the run, you can easily get that setup loose if you push too hard.
I feel like if you run the middle, you got to be right above wherever that seam is. I don't know where it is. I'd need a picture of it,
that's where you want to be, is right on that. You want to be right on that first seam.
If you do that and straddle that as if that is the white line, I think you'll be good on the middle.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking back at my qualifying lap last season because it apparently got shown, or last time we were here, I guess season 2, and that was exactly what I did to qualify second, was right on that first seam, and I think that will be the key. The other thing that'll be key is how much brake do you use, and how much are you going to modulate your speed by just lifting early. Definitely,
modulate's a fun word.
I was not using. I'm an engineer. I got to use big words occasionally. I got to use engineering sounding words. But I found I was using a lot of trail brake. I wasn't doing a lot of heavy braking. You could probably drive it in deep and brake hard, like everybody was doing at Phoenix and killing their runs off the corner. Which that's what it does frustrate at Phoenix, is because you could gain so much speed by backing up 1 and 2, or 3 and 4. It used to be 1 and 2.
I always do that. Don't feel bad.
I know. It's just frustrating when you're backing up a corner and then suddenly you're hit from behind. It's like crap. It's just trying to. That was something, and I don't think the guy who hit me, I don't think Justin is a driver who normally does this, so I think he just made a mistake there.
Are you in a mellow yellow car?
No, it's not a mistake if it's you, but.
I love you, Justin. I'm just busting your balls.
I'll love Justin. It got teed up. But I think that was something that was like with that race. It wasn't just him; other people did it too, where people were just following way too tight into the corner. And I've noticed this a couple times. I've done it. I did it to Hapiak at Martinsville last season because I was more focused on the battle and beside me instead of the guy in front. if you're fought at a track where you're braking heavy, if you're following right on somebody's bumper into the braking zone, you're almost always going to end up dumping them. Like, because unless you're really backing up the corner, they're going to brake first, and then you're going to be screwed because you're going to hit them no matter what you do. So that's something I think that's kind of what happened to me, at least. I still need to go back and watch the broadcast and see how some of the other wrecks played out, because pretty much all of them before that point happened behind me. So I didn't really get a good look at any of them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think this is a race where you'll see, I think Radius will be strong. I mean, they always are, but this kind of track, I was looking at the results of last time we were here. Alonso definitely had some speed. Gracias dominated. The guy I think is going to be really strong here is Zach. If he's here, is Zach Probst. If he doesn't get dumped by somebody in the first stage.
Oh god.
that was.
Yeah, but I mean, Alonso said in his announcement, we have to clean it up.
I
understand where you're coming from, but now we got to win in your end system. So now it's win at all cost. Like that's all that shit's gonna go out the window.
To be fair to us, we were about as clean as every other race that occurred in NASCAR last weekend. We were probably cleaner than the truck race. The truck race, the drivers in the actual truck race showed were even stupider than we were. If you've seen the highlights, like some of the blocks they were throwing in those
I can't stand the trucks.
And stuff. But and then the Cup race, I was at the Cup race, which was an awesome race, but they were spinning out off of 2 the entire race. But
some of that was cars are pretty hard to drive. Like there's some people just
they were hard to drive. Plus they were on edge. Plus it was, as I was there, it was hot and windy. That's always going to be set up. That's always going to be the worst handling cars in those conditions. But
my point is with these trucks, these things are piss easy to drive. Your grandma can do it. I'm being serious. Like especially at the 1.5 plus tracks. We should not be wrecking every. We should not be wrecking every lap.
To be fair, we have the only 1.5 we went to is Homestead, which is
the hardest one.
Which is the hardest 1.5. We just note the dumbest thing is that we ran a natural caution free race at Daytona.
What the fuck are you guys doing? Why is that the track where you guys decide not to caution it out?
Well, that race I needed cautions. My computer started crashing, and no one would. I was like, I'll rejoin. They'll wreck. I'll get back on the lead lap. Nope.
God, you got to back asswards.
Yeah, that race. Well, it doesn't help that we've managed to turn every single plate race into basically a fuel strategy race now.
Yeah, Cam, why don't you change the lengths every once in a while?
Yeah, I think we should.
Very vocal about that, so I don't care if that sounds aggressive.
Yeah, well, it's the Dega races last year worked. I thought the length of this one, it would have worked. The problem just is when you have a 2-stopper, then people get really separated out on the pit stop. No matter what.
I think the 1-stop, if you had more people on it, would have worked. What Cody McCorkle did.
The 1-stop, yeah, no. Well, you might.
I think what he did would have worked if you had more people committed to that, for sure.
No, I agree. I wasn't going to commit to it because I think what you need to do is you need to split at Daytona. If we're going to continue running one race instead of doing a doubleheader like Dega, put the stage at halfway instead of doing the normal 25%. Because that way you're just doing a 1 green flag stop, both runs. It's not at all on the fuel window either run. You can basically pit any time, basically from lap. It would be like from lap 20 to 30.
33% might work.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the 33 would still be close on that 1 stop. Like you want it to be where. Honestly,
no, because 25 was right on the number. 33 would have been fine. You would have had to. You had a decent size window, and you get a okay length.
33 would have been. Let's see, green flag laps would have been restart like 36. Yeah, if you were leading, you couldn't. 32 is tight. You got to go at least to lap. You got to go to lap 40 at least in stage 1. Because also, if it goes to lap 33, stage 1 is fuel mileage.
Either way, you got to figure it out. So because manufacturing, and I hate saying manufacturing because it makes it seem like they're doing it on purpose. They're not doing it on purpose, but it's still manufactured fuel mileage race because it is made with a fuel mileage race.
If we're going to plate tracks, the thought should be to be pack racing the entire time. And instead, it's turned into multiple times now where we've had it where we're racing and it's just
Yeah,
trying
that's my
it's
problem with it.
grinding, and
My first ever race in this league was that Talladega race in season 2. That was
I'm
a fuel
shocked you
mileage
stayed-
race.
I'm shocked you stayed after that. Screw that race, man. That race knocked me out of the playoffs. I hate that race. I
Sorry.
got dumped in the wall at the end of the stage because somebody else didn't know how to lift.
God.
People love my back bumper.
Yeah, Michael liked my back bumper that race.
Yeah.
He pushed me through the grass instead of to the wing.
Yeah. Well, Michael Walls, I'll be honest, at Daytona this year, he was way better than I thought. But when I saw him get up front, I was like, I remember this guy. Back when he was in the Jimmy Johnson scheme, I was like, I don't trust this guy at all.
Damn it, Micah. I still don't trust him. I've been racing with him
he's
since
impre- no,
2017.
he's impressed. He's definitely gotten better than what he was. Like he's still.
No, he's gotten worse. He's washed. Are you kidding me? Dude's got 36 league championships. He can't win a race now.
Does he really?
It's on a bunch of different games, yes. Not on iRacing.
Oh. To be fair, some people it doesn't translate. Like,
you're right. I learned that really quick with him.
Yeah, it doesn't translate always. Like it's, I sucked at most racing games, but I'm good. I'm pretty solid at iRacing. Like it's the actual sim compared to like Heat or Forza or any of that. It's very different in terms of what you got to do.
I just drive the car.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's gonna be a battle. So I think, yeah, I was gonna say I think though Zach Probst is one to watch. Obviously Kruger, he did not run here he did run here in season 2. He just was ass. I'm sorry, I was looking at the results and I was like, oh, Kruger probably had a good race here, and then I realized he finished like a lap behind me in 10th, 2 laps down, just ahead of Caleb McCurry and Dawson Allen. That's no offense to Dawson, but especially Dawson back then, not the person you want to be finishing near.
Watch yourself.
Hey, I love Dawson. Dawson makes my paint schemes.
Understand.
I love Dawson. He's gotten a lot better at iRacing, but I think that was when he first had iRacing. He had all kinds of computer issues. I don't even know if he was on his Mardon PC yet at that point. Like that was like really rough.
See, I made sure I didn't start racing this league until I wasn't racing on a laptop. Yeah, that was hell. I could not tell you how much. I cannot tell you how much iRating I lost just because my computer wouldn't work during an NIS race, and I just had to sit there and lose it.
Mess with the laptop until the laptop's charging port failed. Like I was fine with it. Admittedly, I should have upgraded sooner just because of performance-wise. What I can get out of this has really improved my ability. Plus, being on a widescreen monitor really has helped. But the laptop I was fine with, and then the charging port stopped working, so it would randomly disconnect from the power in the middle of the race. And whenever like it would disconnect from the charger, when on battery power, the frames would go from about 40 to about 2. And you can't really race at 2 frames a second. It gets a little difficult.
My laptop somehow got 60 frames a second whenever it wasn't like NIS or something crazy.
Yeah, and then since this, other than the blue screening issue I had on the previous one, which Haynes has gotten me fixed up, so which I think just that was something I'm still going to blame UPS. They were rough with it when they shipped the first one. The second one they weren't rough with and it works, so I'm blaming UPS until I know otherwise, or I did something stupid because I'm an idiot with computers. That's a strong possibility, but yeah, we'll see what happens this week. I'm hoping the next 4 races in the 2 main leagues I run here in court, I've got 4 tracks that I'm all very, very good at with a chance to go out and win. So hoping maybe I can finally pull one off the next 2 weeks, because we got here, then Michigan's that's going to be a battle. And then and utterly we got Kansas and Auto Club, which are both fun ones too. So be interesting to see.
Mostly the lines that people run and how they set out the passes, because you do have a lot of choices there. so long as you don't hit the bump and shoot up towards the wall. So that's the thing I'm most interested in, then how people handle the tire fall off, because that is an old race surface that's really bumpy, and it's if you slide your tires just a couple times, you're going to be in for a long run.
I don't know when iRacing last updated their setup, but it felt like an older setup. Because iRacing's gotten better about the open setups being looser and not falling off the tight cliff. And this is the first one that I've ran for one of the tracks this year where it is the absolute cliff of tightness. So, because this one's loose for like 3 laps and then you're tight. Like it's not it's not Phoenix, where Phoenix you would get tight later in the run, but it wasn't like undrivable tight. Here it's, if you try to get to the gas in 3 and 4 before like 3/4 of the corner, you're just gonna slam into the wall. Once the tires wear. So that was something to watch for.
I just thought Phoenix was tight for every corner except for the first one. Even on cold tires. I don't know if that's just how I drive, but I
once I started backing up 3 and 4 more, it was, but I could get loose in 3 and 4 on old tires. But I also started downshifting in 3 and 4 later in runs, so that might have something to do with it too. Because you could, once the tires wore, you could get a really good drive off in third. But yeah, they're definitely not going to be any shifting this weekend. Unless if you're downshifting here, you're definitely doing something wrong.